Hey everyone, welcome to Messy in the Middle, a real estate podcast. We're two realtors from two different coasts looking to improve and grow. Whether you're a buyer, a seller, or an agent, we'll share the tips, tricks, and hidden hacks for success in the real estate world. Your journey from ideas to implementation starts now. Hey,
Boom. Ed. Hey, good morning, Jefi. How are you doing?
Woo! We got Royce in the house.
How are we doing?
Royce is in the house. We've got Royce Branning with us. But before we do our intro, we're going to review a little story on why we need him so badly. So if you listened to last week's episode on eliminating digital distractions, you know, I'm coming off as this guy who's got it all together. Like, you know, I'm clean, don't need anybody's help. We're moving forward. So last night, Lynn, my wife's watching a football game, and so I'm like, I'm just going to go get a little reading done. And so I, get in bed to do some reading, and I had my phone there, and I had YouTube up. Jeff and I were working on a project on some stuff, and I started scrolling, and I remember Jefi was talking about the Muppets and how she really likes the Muppets. So before I know it, I type in the Muppets into YouTube and proceed to go on the deepest Muppet dive with the Swedish chef doing Rapper's Delight, which I watched about 10 times.
Naturally.
Got some classic content with Muppet stuff. Rita Moreno doing something from the 70s. I'm like going deep into this stuff. Then it's like a Michael Jackson thing comes up with Laurel and Hardy. And I start getting into like, what is this?
Wow, you really got deep.
Well, then Lynn comes to bed and she's like, "Are you actually watching the Muppets?" I'm like, you got to see this. This is crazy. So then she's like, "Is Jim Henson dead?" I'm like, "Yeah, I think he's dead." So she Googles Jim Henson. It's like, "Oh yeah, he died from a strep infection." But she goes a little deeper. It's like, "Oh my gosh. His son is married to the love interest in Ferris Bueller's Day Off."
No.
Yes. And so, okay.
Hot.
Yeah, she was hot. Still is. And so then I'm like, oh my God, another hour wasted. This is exactly what we're not supposed to be doing. And what a great lead in for Royce.
Yes.
Royce,
Yes.
save us.
Save us.
I'm just gonna take that clip and put it everywhere and be like, this happens to you, we stop it from happening. That's gonna be it. That's the ad.
I love that. So let's introduce Royce. This is Royce Branning from ClearSpace. We've had a lot of fun digging into you, but I love this. Your company promotes healthier and more sustainable engagement between humans and their technological devices. I loved that.
That's right.
It's kind of a mouthful for me, but I did it.
Yeah. That was well said. I through the process of ClearSpace, we've worn a lot of different hats with describing our product to people. That might be one of the more verbose ones. Was that the most recent one that I explained it to you as? Because I apologize.
No, I was digging deep. Like we have this producer. His name's Seth. We love him. And one of the things that he was working with us on was interviews, because a lot of times we don't have somebody we're interviewing. Yeah. It's just Ed and I. So I went down the rabbit hole of discovering you and your company.
We dug deep, baby.
Oh no.
We know where the bodies are buried.
Why don't you tell us how you would describe your company then, if I give it like a full mouthful?
I think the language you use is accurate and I think helpful in certain extents, but maybe the most accessible language we have right now is that ClearSpace is a mobile app that makes your phone less addicting. Ooh. We all know that these devices have mechanisms built into them that can pull us in, and ClearSpace is the software that's helping disarm those mechanisms. I think you guys were using some war analogies in the last episode. There is a war for your attention, and you're bringing a knife to a gunfight, and we're kind of arming you with at least equitable defense mechanisms.
I love it.
I love that.
Yeah.
There was another thing that you said, and you said the gym sauna is one of the last remaining places that you can go without your stroll.
Oh no! Okay, you guys did deep dive. I was hoping I could prevent this by blocking the scrolling. Yes, I have been known to say that. I realized that in the gym sauna the other week, where you're just sitting around. There's a group of people that also aren't looking at their phones, but aren't really interested in talking, which I think really magnifies the experience of us not being on our phones.
Kind of in like an elevator. When you're in an elevator and everybody, I'm normally the one that breaks the ice in the elevator though. Like, hey, how's everybody doing today?
Yeah, I'm gonna do that in the sauna next time. Hey everybody, how you doing?
Yeah, how we all doing?
So
Hope
hey,
you got your towel on.
Yeah, exactly. So, in a part of our research, we want to hear a little bit more about your founding of the company. And from our understanding, you were getting married and announced to your fiance, "Hey, I'm quitting my job at Quicken, and I'm starting a company." Tell us about that.
Yeah, so the kind of initial leap off was, just as you said, it was a couple months after we got engaged. And, I'd been at kind of the stable, mid-sized, big tech job, pretty decent hours, not too over stressful, good salary, the whole nine. And I had kind of been feeling this new kind of emergent pull in my life to build software that helps me kind of fix some of the problems that I was experiencing. And the top of that list was how frequently I was finding myself on my phone. Built an early prototype. This is a couple months before I would end up finding my co-founder, Oliver, who serendipitously was kind of in the same phase of life, building these types of solutions as well. But before we got there, I basically told my wife one day, I go, I think I should probably go leave to work on this full time. This seems like the type of problem that deserves our full attention. Like, I think people really need this. And at that point, there was a really early version of the app that people had started using. It was I just put it out on the App Store, and random people were downloading. They were going looking for apps that could help them spend less time on their phones, and they were using it. And then they were reaching out, and really impactful stuff. Like, people, I remember one of the first emails I ever got from a user was someone telling me that ClearSpace is one of the things he's crediting with helping him piece his like relationship with his wife back together. And I was like, oh, whoa. Okay.
Hair's all on my arm.
Yeah. There was kind of this thing that happened where I realized that the problem that was a hair on fire problem for me was actually experienced at a magnitude large enough that putting a small little app out there that just slightly improves people's ability to restrain themselves was starting to have ripple effects. And so that's when we took the leap. And she was a little nervous at first, but overall, my wife has been so supportive of the journey, and couldn't do any of it without her. So lots of credit goes there.
A little nervous. I want to hear a bit more about that. I mean, was it like, hey, so I'm leaving my job? Silence.
Yeah. What if we did that after the wedding? No, I mean, it was a fun conversation, we'll say, but it was, I think at the bottom of it, I had been able to pick up contracting work and consulting work. And the fortunate thing about being a software engineer in Silicon Valley is, with how ubiquitous technology is, you have it can be tough to get a job, and the job market changes, but there's a lot of need for this kind of trade. So our backstop was always kind of, if I need to pull the escape hatch, I'll go.
You can do it.
I'll go write some software that steals people's attention again.
You're all, now that I've gathered all this information, I know what I can do to get into your head a little more. Well, one of the things that I saw that I loved, and it spoke to me a ton, is you were at Notre Dame. And you were noted as saying that you wanted to serve others, which kind of came out in what you were just talking about. But when you had that feeling of wanting to serve others, was it directly related to this app at that time, or were there other things kind of bouncing around in your head?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think, my personal kind of history with regard to Notre Dame and learning to serve others was just kind of, that's so deeply ingrained into kind of the ethos of the school. go to a place where I've never been surrounded by that many smart people. And I grew up in the Silicon Valley, where a lot of people are really proud of how smart they are. The Midwest kind of temperament with regard to intelligence is a little different. People are wicked sharp, but they really, really enjoy loving other people. And it's like infectious. So Notre Dame for me was kind of this experience. I got to serve as an RA in my dorm, which instead of being at every other school in the country, being an RA is like the lamest thing ever. And then of course I tell them I was an RA and like, oh, got it. That guy, the guy breaking up the freshmen, drinking beer in their dorm or something. No, like actually at Notre Dame, this being an RA, and I'm tooting my own horn, but I wear it as one of the greatest honors of my life. Like the community honored people that were like servant leaders basically. And so I think that you steep yourself in that tradition for long enough, and it kind of retrofits your mind a little bit to say, okay, I have a responsibility with the opportunities I've been given, with the talents that I have, to try to go build something ambitious that can help people. And that's the type of thing that you can be proud in those communities and otherwise of saying like, yeah, this is what I'm throwing my weight against. I had a computer science professor, and we're not talking like ethics professor or philosophy professor,
right,
but he basically stood up at the end of my senior year and he's like, hey, I want you all to know there's a ton of money to be made in software, and you did not get this degree to chase that. You got it to make sure that people are like taken care of in the software dimension. And so like, you need to go do that. And it was like, it was a commissioning, it felt like. Yeah.
Wow.
Okay.
That's not the typical message that's delivered in those programs.
I don't think so. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
That's
I have
crazy.
shivers all over my body right now. I think, okay, I'm just going to pop in here because this is a little gift.
Nice. Rick
to
Rubin.
me. Oh, have you read this book?
I'm like 50 pages in.
Okay.
It's awesome.
Because the chapter I read this morning was all on what you just talked about.
Wow.
But I think that's why all my hair is standing up on end, is just hearing it from your mouth, and I've just read this, and it's such a beautiful thing. And my next question, which is what you pretty much answered, was that whisper. We talk a lot about the creative whisper, and we as realtors get that in our own right. We get that, right? We're creating how we're communicating with our clients. We're creating our websites. We're creating social media. And it sounds like your whisper was several things. It was being at that university. It was hearing your professor. It was having these things, being in the Midwest as opposed to being on the West Coast. So would you say that is true? Those were your little whispers to what built ClearSpace, or is there more?
Yeah, I think those might be a little bit more of like maybe like the personal ethos that brought me to a point where I was ready to take that leap. But I think that one of the most interesting aspects of kind of what we've built so far is the collective whisper. My co-founder Oliver graduated computer science at Georgetown, went and worked at Amazon as a software engineer for a number of years on Alexa. Incredibly bright. He's our CTO. And he had recently been the CTO of another company. And coming out of that transition, that really deep work place, we're about the same age. He had found himself focusing on building tools to protect his attention, because it kind of seemed to be that there was like this bubbling up point in both of our collective consciousnesses. We didn't even know each other at the time. We actually met in the process on Y Combinator's co-founder matching platform. But as we crossed paths and he had seen a little bit of the iPhone app and shared some of the projects he was working on, it was like, wait a minute, you're thinking about this, I'm thinking about this. There's a couple hundred of these users that are thinking about this. Maybe this is kind of a cultural phenomenon that's reached a threshing point. And we do think that the pandemic and remote work, breaking down some of the traditional structures we have for accountability around technology, was really this explosion event that grew all of our awareness about what's going on and what we need to do about it. So for me, that was like maybe the third whisper. A fun little anecdote on that too is we've actually had these two great product science advisors come aboard the ClearSpace team, PhDs in neuroscience from USC, really brilliant people. They were building almost an identical app 6 years ago.
Wow.
They're deeply theoretical, right? So we see this trend all the time, right? the scientists, the researchers are kind of out ahead of the curve on what's going on. And they released a really cool product. It didn't quite have the technological integration that opportunities that we have today, which has a lot to do with more and more people being concerned about this. So we've kind of gotten to see that whisper kind of grow into, maybe some slightly louder utterances. And even this time space between when they started working on an app like this and to where we are, we came to it naturally. They came to it kind of foreseeing what was going to happen. Mm-hmm. And we've been able to join forces a little bit and be like, okay, there's this collective awakening to the problems caused by our devices. And we feel ready to articulate the solutions. That's kind of how I think about it. Yeah.
Do you get a sense that it's kind of having a moment where this awareness is starting to bubble up and that people are like, hey, we need to do something about that? Are you seeing that kind of in your growth curve?
Totally. Yeah. Across the board. The first close investigation I started doing into this space was about 3 years ago now. And if you wanted to use kind of even just like the simplest measures of increased awareness, like Google search volume on relevant keyword phrases, all you see is curves that are up and to the right. And you can credit that to, like I said, kind of pandemic, remote work accelerated a lot of that. But then you also have the generational kind of impact of, okay, what do we see in the first decade of these devices? What do we see in the second decade? And particularly, I think there's something really interesting. I myself am, a late millennial. I think probably not quite a Gen Z, but like right on that threshing point. I went to school with Gen Zs. We grew up going to bed, sneaking our phones. We know all the kind of little tricks. So there's a heightened awareness around what kids are going to do in the next generation, and a heightened awareness about like the impact it's had on us. We know that like I had social media, super, super early. I was the youngest of 4 kids. So all the older, I got to like watch all the movies early, all that stuff. Right. Yeah. And like,
right.
I haven't really lived a formative period in my life without these devices. And I can see the negative impact that has on my life.
Yeah. You're a digital native. Yeah.
Digital native. Before I ask the next question, I'm going to share this story really quickly. So my oldest daughter is 27, and she was also took the phone to bed. And then my husband and I started realizing she was on the phone at 1, 2, 3 a.m. because we could see it.
How did you find out?
Well, when I would log on, I could see activity at that time.
Yeah.
So we started this rule when the rule was the phone at 9 o'clock comes to me. And what I didn't realize was the backlash she was going to get at school because she wasn't responding and her friends were angry at her. So I kept the phone. And when the kids would text, I'd say, hey, I have Jordy's phone. I'll have Jordy's phone no matter what from 9 o'clock on until she moves out of this house. And then, so the backlash stopped. And then these kids as adults, came to her wedding and come over to our house, and they're here and they're like, oh, they call me Mama J. Hey, Mama J, I just want you to know we wish our parents would have taken our phones.
Wow. Oh, wow.
Boom.
Yeah.
Huge.
Wow.
Huge thing. They just needed, they need that wall of protection.
Absolutely.
Right?
No, 100%.
Yeah.
No, some of the most compelling voices about regulating personal behaviors in this are coming from kids, digital natives who are keenly aware of the negative impact. It's you almost want the structure. You desire that imposed structure because you know that like willpower alone or the social factors at play are too powerful to pull you in. It's like I'd love to just have my phone break for a few days. It'd be so fun.
Yes.
Yeah, and that's what that's the gift that you're giving. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and that's so interesting because I pride myself on having a lot of willpower, but like I fell down to the Muppets last night. So my question on this is, phone addiction. Is it a real thing? Let's talk about that.
That's a $100 million question right now. I think that there's kind of we think about this in 2 different ways. The DSM, has not officially,
DSM, timeout. So what is DSM?
I'm actually a newcomer to the health space. Let me see what DSM actually stands for. Diagnostic and Statistic Manual of Mental Disorders. So,
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
yeah, it's
Gotcha.
the health code. It's for me, for my engineer brain, it maps to the code that people have agreed on. You can diagnose disease based on in the World Health Organization.
Totally understand now.
Yeah. So they have not put pen to paper on phone addiction as a diagnosable disease. So that's a good starting point. We can go, okay, is it technically a disease? Not yet. A call out there is that video game addiction was released in the most recent iteration. That's the first digital-based addiction that made it into the DSM. So you can probably see hints at what it would take to get phone addiction in there. I think phone addiction is a really helpful term for us to understand the forces at play in our relationship with the devices. I don't think that it's one that in culture people are shying away from. I think that's what a lot of our users, that's what they say to name the relationship they have with their devices. And part of our job is to find the most accessible language to bridge the gap between people's desire to change and their ability to change. So phone addiction, is it a diagnosable disease? No. Is it language that many people are using to describe their relationship with their phone, and perhaps accurately or helpfully? I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. And
Go ahead, Ed.
no, I was going to say, and maybe that's a good launching point for, isn't it true that dopamine's created by these devices? And so maybe if it's, not clearly an addiction, that you're getting a hit from that, maybe you can talk a little bit about what's occurring.
Yeah.
By design. I mean, you've designed these apps, and now you're on the other side preventing this from happening. Walk us through that.
Totally. I mean, I always try to preface by I'm an engineer that, talks to people and builds solutions more so than I've been around enough people that know the science really well to make me super aware of how I don't know the science to that extent. But the dopamine is this chemical in your brain that has a super powerful impact on drawing you into like behavior and habit loops. And it's worth mentioning that this is at play when you're doing really healthy things, like when you get excited to go working out, or you get really productive workflow state. Like some of that joy and elation that you feel is downstream of dopamine. So it's not all bad, but you can also, your brain can kind of be hacked a little bit, especially with regard to social media. Variable reward is a big one. Going through your TikTok feed and, every 10th video is kind of interesting, and then a couple of them are kind of lame. That's actually a more powerful force for your brain to get drawn into and keep scrolling, because you're kind of hunting and people like to draw analogies to hunting and gathering or something. You're kind of looking for the next thing, and we love that thrill. Now, some of our advisors have actually written books on digital behavior design and baked into them very honorably primitives that help us understand that these powers are supposed to be used for good. We can help people get on good dieting regimens and workouts and all different types of health, or mental health journeys, meditation. The thing that it has been used to do is to get us just scrolling more. And so variable reward, social kind of impetus, lots of different aspects that roll up ultimately to this idea that you are getting this peak in joy and, kind of this feeling of sensation when you're chasing that high, which is why we put a little blocker in between it. There's some really compelling early studies that demonstrate that just even a slight buffer between you and that dopamine allows your brain passively to discount that reward. So your brain's anticipating that dopamine reward when you go to open Instagram. It's like, is there a notification? That's that variable reward. Is there? Isn't there? Oh, there is. What is it? You're searching. And you're looking for social validation or whatever the prize is at the end. And by us putting just a 15-second breathing buffer there, the background cycle of your brain is cognizant that it's going to take longer for them to get there than it would have otherwise. And that diminishes the value that your brain in anticipation places on the dopamine that it could receive.
That's
okay.
Crazy.
Yeah.
I was going to ask another question, but I'm going to jump to this. do you want to walk us through a little bit about the app so that we can understand it? Because you're giving us a little bit of information, and
Sure.
and then in that, I would really like to talk about how, as realtors, we can utilize the app, because, as just like what you're saying, we live in this we walk around with our phones as our full communication space for receiving new business. So if we are not in tune with that, we can lose a lead, we can lose a client, which is gross to say, but it's totally true. And it's happened to both Ed and I if we don't respond in 30 seconds. So let's start with the app, and then I want to see how it can work for Ed and I in the real estate world.
Totally. Totally. And I don't want to lose the two ideas that came to my head there. I think both.
Great. Talk about them.
Agents as professionals, I think, is really interesting. And I also wanted to ask you guys a little bit about some of your policies around personal assistance and having layers of intentionality there for yourselves.
Yeah, absolutely.
Please.
I also think that there's just like a really, really cool missional aspect to real estate agents being this touch point, and like part of your guys' service is helping people establish this home, right? And the home is such an important part to family and life and success and wealth building, all these things.
Yes.
And like, I think there's this really cool intersection point about what setting up a healthy home. Like, you made this huge investment in a place that you could cultivate a family and a life, and you're letting like the outside world just like dive bomb into it if you're not putting the right protocols in your home. And I think there could be some fun things there.
Yeah.
But maybe should we get the app walkthrough out of the way, or should I just run with?
Run with it. Run. I love it.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm curious for the both of you. One of the really early manifestations that Oliver and I talked about as evolutions of the ClearSpace product was thinking about what the most wealthy and affluent, pseudo kings of yesteryear could command around their attention. These are people that, the CEOs of top corporations in the early 21st century, they have personal assistants, right? And it sounds like maybe both of you have people, and personal assistance has become actually like more accessible, or in our business world where we have more notifications, maybe more necessary. But you think about the demands on any individual person's attention, and like, really what we all need is somebody that's filtering the communications in and out for us. And I'm curious, it sounds like you guys have some protocols around that, but around how you kind of filter those, how has that journey been for you when you have missed those calls, and what are the adjustments that you made there? I'm curious.
Yeah.
Do you want me to go
Jeffy,
first? You want to go?
Yeah,
Okay.
you go, Jeffy, because you've got a good story on that.
We did an entire podcast on giving referrals because, and this is, okay, so here's the perfect thing. I, for years, have my phone on silent. I can't stand a buzz. I don't like the ring. I couldn't even choose a ringtone if I wanted to. I don't like them. So this lead came in, a referral came in, and it was actually from a Buffini agent. We're part of a network of agents who pride themselves on doing business at a very high level. And I would say that 95% of us do at that level.
Yep.
Well, this referral came in, and I kid you not, it was less than 20 minutes because it was I had ended a project and I was checking my phone to see what was going on. And I responded, and the agent said, "Oh, I already gave it away. You didn't get back to me fast enough." 20 minutes. And honestly, I've had them in less. I've had it happen in 10 minutes. I had a listing come through, and I called her within 10 minutes. She said, "Oh, honey, don't worry. I already found somebody else."
Yeah. And
that's 10 minutes.
That's significant dollar volume flowing out.
It's like $1 million listing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I had to come to grips, and Ed and I talked this through quite a bit. We talked this through, and you just have to, if that person literally will not wait for you for 10 minutes, then that's not a true referral. It's just kind of a lead being thrown out at you. And then the second layer to that, to answer your question, is that my right arm, I wish there was a new name for assistant, because Raquel is so much more than an assistant. She just is incredible. She will read all of my texts, all of my emails, and she will call me on my personal phone, which will ring because she's in my favorites, and say, this is come in for you. That's like, twice a week. That's not a big deal, but I don't have to spend all those hours doing that. So if you could find a way to pick up keywords that come through in a text or an email that will call me and tell me, that would be amazing.
Yeah. And likewise on that with my assistant, Beth, who's absolutely fabulous. Reads all the email, processes all that. And we have what we call, Jefi and I both have our burner phones, our personal phones, so that when we go on vacation, the business phone stays behind, and the personal assistant can route things when it comes up. But it's not easy, and you still miss opportunities. But it's kind of that, and maybe to pose a question back to you, how do you balance being readily available versus doing deep work and serving your clients?
Totally. Well, I want to draw a comparison with another kind of target demographic of people that we see have this exact problem, which is professional content creators. Okay. So we actually, inside of our user base, there's actually like a disproportionately high number of people that have rather large followings on social media such that it can be their career.
Yeah.
And in talking to them, we've heard this exact same phenomenon. We've come to kind of call it, we picked this up from a couple of the different creators, like their kale phone and their cocaine phone is kind of how they describe it. And this exact thing that you're talking about, the social validation is the typical carrot that we see everywhere in society. But when these phones become both mission critical tools and weapons grade distraction devices, because in your profession, it's both those things, and they're bleeding next to each other, right? Yeah. That's when the reward is actually also like survival to a certain extent, right? It's earning a living, it's doing these things. So everyone can relate that you feel good and validated when you get a like, but put a couple, put $1 million listing on the other end of that message is open. Yeah. And it gets really wild really quick. And as we move towards more people building their professions in the digital realm or having digital communications, that becomes really, really costly. And I think that exactly what you're talking about, being able to kind of flag what type of communications are necessary or important or expedient, I think that's actually a missing piece of our current technological stack. We on a 30,000 foot view, we talk about building the missing intentionality layer for technology. And a first part of that is discerning people's intention and their goals. And we're working a lot on that with the relationship between impulse opens and doom scrolling. But we definitely are looking to build and generalize that into the realms of communications and all different aspects there.
Yeah. I mean, you want a Pavlov dog reaction, you just put $1 million listing on the end of that buzz, and you're gonna you just salivate. You don't know what's coming.
You're like, wait.
I think that's a great transition point, and this might actually even open up to a little bit more on the app. Is, let's say you're Steve Jobs and it's the beginning of the whole iPhone revolution. If you could make 3 changes to people's phone setups, what would they be?
Okay, so I'm Steve Jobs, but I have the same mission as I do right now, right? I'm not.
That's right. Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Like you have a chance. If you could, exactly.
Yeah. Good response there.
Yeah. If you could change, if you had the ability to change 3 things in people's phone setups today, what would they be to promote digital wellness?
Yeah. So it's a little bit of a tricky. I'm trying to work through my own brain on if I were to remove the incentives associated with, like, Apple, I think does a pretty good job at providing some tools, but at the end of the day, they're not selling attention protection. They're selling a utility and a tool. And I don't think they're the worst of culprits of needing to demand your attention. But the things that I would do is, it's actually not dissimilar from what we do, right? Okay. So I think if we're starting at the beginning, the number one thing would very much be some type of exercise that helps people distinguish and categorize the nature of the different apps on the phone. So that's actually probably number one. I think that if we're building an iPhone and right next to sales of iPhones and utility of it, it's just as important for us as a business. We're Apple Computer in the early 2000s, and we're like, it's just as important to us that no one gets addicted to these things. Mm-hmm. I think you have to start with the intentionality layer, because there's not a one size fits all answer to this. What is valuable to some people is a waste of time to others. And a lot of those tensions actually fit within the same apps often. Twitter for me has been a place where we found investors. It's been a place where we found huge game-changing partners. And it's also a place where I will read about NCAA football for a couple hours on a Saturday sometimes. There's...
Not so much this year.
Yeah.
With Notre Dame. But go ahead.
That's real doom scrolling right there.
Yeah, that's right.
Sorry,
I took you off your game there.
Yeah, no, the number one thing I'd say is that, and we're really trying to crack this, is getting people to understand that apps are more, there's more dimensions to your relationship to even a specific app, and then also your phone at large than what meets the eye. The analogy we draw often here is on like nutrition in the United States over the last 20, 30 years. Mm-hmm. Introduction of fast food, processed food, and then like downstream awareness around micro and macronutrients, around calories and what that means. Even legislation that forces fast food restaurants like McDonald's to put calories on the menu. Like, there's this whole awareness piece that I think is the number one thing. That's my feature one. I'll blitz to the other ones. I'd put an option for an intentionality buffer. They have Apple screen time, so they kind of have done this. I'd say we want to, like what we've done, and we've extended their functionality to allow for more well-being based exercises that actually have a psychological element to allowing you to push back. And then the third thing is accountability and community. The ability to integrate this really, really cleanly and as a priority with the systems of accountability set up in your life. If your child, it's your parents, maybe your school, as you grow up, that's a spouse, significant other, friends, coworkers. And that should be a top priority. I think there's been a lot of coverage about how screen time has kind of less than fulfilled some of the obligations that people feel they have around that. And I don't think that happens if it's a primitive. I think there's some goodwill efforts that have been made, but they're not as polished or effective as they would need to be in order to meet that goal. Yeah.
Okay. I have a question. So after this interview, I'm going to download the app.
Yeah.
Same.
Okay. So what do you want me to know when I'm telling somebody else about the app?
What do I want you to know when you're telling somebody else about the app?
Like, teach me the elevator pitch, or tell me something that I can share so that I can get someone else to download the app, i.e. Cody.
Yes.
My husband.
Oh, this is good. I would have a good... Well, I think that the kind of tricky slip out of the run away from answer is that we have a product that people shout about from the rooftops, which is crazy encouraging to us. I find that users who have derived benefit from it describe it to their friends and family and people in their lives better than I ever could. I would love to hear Jefi's description of ClearSpace. We actually ask the users that we pull, our number one question is, how do you describe this to your friends? And they give us the best articulations of ClearSpace. I mean, one of them is like, we've just started using it. Makes your phone less addicting. Period. Full stop. None of this. Everything else we're doing is really cool. But like, at the end of the day, what have you done for me lately? Job to be done is, the phone's addicting. Make it less addicting. And that's what we do.
So I'm going to put a finer point on it then.
Okay.
How could ClearSpace have kept me last night from doing the Muppet deep dive and wasting an hour of my life and kind of messing my sleep up last night?
Muppets are wasted.
Well, I mean, I enjoyed it. It was fun. But my point is here's a guy. I'm like, I'm actively trying to put these, reduce my screen time and distraction, and I got sucked in. So how could ClearSpace have helped me in that?
Right. So our mobile app starts your journey with asking you what those intentions are. So you've already done that work yourself. You've thought through why you want to use your phone less and what that's going to mean for you. Then we walk you through an exercise identifying the key apps that cause you disruption and overuse of your phone. With each of those apps, you assign a budget. We just ask you the simple question: approximately how many times a day do you feel like, just your gut reaction, do you feel like you should be on this app? And we can adjust that later on, but let's start by drawing a line in the sand and saying, okay, you know what? I think I'm at my best when I open Twitter, X, 3 times a day. 3 times a day for a budget between 1 to 15 minutes. We're not even getting super granular about the amount of time that we want to limit on the specific app yet. We're just thinking about the action to open it and engage in an intentional session. Once we have that infrastructure set up, every time you go to open one of the apps that you've identified, ClearSpace sits in front of the app. You do not have access to it until you go through our 15-second intentionality exercise, which will take you through a deep breath. It's going to give you a quote that's hopefully inspirational or reminds you a little bit about the goals that you've set up and your intentions. And then on the last page, we're going to hit you.
All over the camera.
On the last page, we're going to hit you with that goal that you set up. You said, wait, me yesterday on my morning coffee, I was setting up my goals for the week, wanted to be on this app no more than 3 times. It's 10 a.m. and I'm already at 3 sessions. What's going on here? You check your goals. Then at the end of it, you set your session timer. So you say, I have an intent for this session. Maybe that's entertainment. Maybe that's utility. You can approximate how much time that's going to take you to get done. You click 5 minutes, and in 5 minutes, we're pulling you out. You cannot have access to it anymore. If in order to regain access, you'd have to go back through the breathing exercise. And then here's the kicker. If you're over your budget, we're going to give you the opportunity to have an automated text sent to your spouse or your business partner or anyone in your life.
No.
It's opt-in. It's completely opt-in. But if you really want to put yourself to the test.
That's so great. Talk about accountability partner. That is so great.
I cannot wait. I'm sending this to all 3 of the kids. I'm sending this to Cody. I'm sending this to all my friends. Like, I cannot wait. Okay.
Oh, Cody, sorry, man.
Cody's like, oh, Jefi, God, stop.
Let me give you one more like fun add-on because you're talking about bringing your community into it. And this is one of the things we've identified is that like, this is actually a fun race to run with other people.
Okay.
We just released our Step to Scroll challenge.
Okay.
So you can invite on a 3-day little mini sprint. You can invite friends and family to come with you, and you all only get to scroll on apps for as many minutes as 100 steps that you've walked. So every 100 steps in your day earns you 1 minute of scrolling. Okay. That's your access point. But the end of the week, it's who's accumulated the most steps without taking them out of their bank account and spending them on scrolling.
Okay. This is amazing. Okay. Do I need to give as much credit to Oliver as I'm about to give to you?
Yes, more.
Okay. Oliver, Royce. Wow. This is amazing. Okay. We got to tie this up with a bow. So I just would love, actually, Ed and I would love your favorite feedback story. And we've heard one, and that was about the couple. But is there another one, your favorite, the one that kind of gave you chills and made you go, oh my God, I'm walking the right path?
Gosh, there are a lot.
First one that pops in.
So the first one that pops in is actually, it's a very interesting, I think it is maybe even less of a success story and more of a get back to work. Let's go build the thing that people need.
Okay.
It's a call that Oliver and I were both on. It was back at the end of Y Combinator, and we had just released a brand new version of the app. So we had kind of done a whole refactor and a lot of the foundations that you see that make the process a lot smoother to get set up on. And it was about 3 months in, and we get a user call where a user's reporting a really weird bug, and we're going, wait a minute, this doesn't even sound like our app. Are they using the wrong app? And we said, hey, we have no idea what's going on. We want to help you out. We'd be happy to hop on a call. So we hop on a Zoom call with this user, and there's a woman, a mother, who had 3 kids running around in the background. And she was actually probably my age. So a younger mom, 3 kids running around, living in the middle. I think she was in Ohio or Iowa. And she's showing a version of the app that is like super outdated. I don't know how she had that outdated of an app. She didn't have automatic updates on or something like that. Yeah. But she showed us, she's like, hey, the continue button is breaking when I try to, I can't get it into any of my apps. She had ClearSpace set up on every single app on her phone. For context, our typical user sets ClearSpace up on like 2 to 4 apps on their phone. Okay, you have a couple ones that are addicting and necessary. She said, I decided that I wanted to be present to my kids in this stage, and that I didn't have the willpower to make that decision on my own. But what we found out is when we had shipped this new update, the old version had a dependency conflict, and the continue button, so the button that allows you to access the apps, was broken for her. So she had access to none of the apps on her phone. And we were going, okay, this is a call to better testing, better engineering, and we were super grateful for her taking time. We got it fixed and shipped in 2 hours. But the idea that this was a solution that we had built for a really precise use case, and people are going, I need this everywhere, and for such a righteous kind of personal mission in their lives. Right. That one sticks out to us. We go, okay, there are people boots on the ground doing the most important things, like raising kids, and we are arming them with the ability to do that better. Let's come in fired up, and let's work really hard to make sure it's the appropriate solution.
Okay, I've never had more shivers during one of our podcasts ever. I feel like my body is on full like tune in alert. This has been such a gift to have you on our podcast today. We're definitely going to do a link to the app in our show notes. We'll do a link to anything that you want people to see. So please forward that to us. Royce, you are amazing. I can't wait to meet Oliver. So maybe that'll happen one day.
Yeah.
Let's do it. We got to do it.
All right.
Yeah, this has been.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say this has just been fantastic. It's amazing that we were kind of on this journey, and then you popped up, and so we're glad to be able to learn more tools. I'll be downloading it. And to both of you, when you get enough credits, Swedish Chef Rapper's Delight. Check it out.
That's so good. Well, thank you both so much. This conversation has me absolutely fired up on a Wednesday morning, and I really appreciate the opportunity to come on.
All right, everybody. We hope you enjoyed the show and gained insight into the behind-the-scenes world of real estate and control of your cell phone. Please leave us your feedback. We also welcome any ideas you would like to discuss on future shows. And don't forget to like and share. Thanks, everyone.